Hello and welcome to day 170 in this quest for a 2000 rapid chess rating on chess.com. So I've been in a little bit of a slump. Um, See if I can break free of that. I made it up to 1720 and now I've dropped back to 1700. So I think something I've been doing wrong in recent games is not making sure that I develop all of my pieces before I try and start some attack. So I need to work on that today, getting my pieces off their starting squares before I try and commence any operations or attack. All right, it's having trouble finding an opponent here. Finally, we have a 1713 player of the white pieces. I've been working on this Jabava London setup, so hopefully we can get something out of that today. All right, so we have the Jabava London with the white pieces. How will my opponent respond? A good move is pawn to a6, keeping me out of the b5 square. Okay, so they attack immediately here. I'm going to, fortify with this pawn. Now, I may want to go ahead. All right, so they're attacking here. What should we do? Well, there is a nice little defense here where we can attack the queen and defend our pawn at the same time. Let's go ahead and do that, see if that surprises them. Now we can just block that and protect our knight. And we're also targeting this pawn here. So I don't think they expected that. They thought they were going to immediately fork my king and my knight and grab a free knight there. So I imagine they have to protect this pawn. If they go here with their pawn, then what do we do? Okay. Now I have to decide, do I go here, capturing, forcing them to recapture with their bishop? It gives up the bishop pair, but they will have two central pawns to my one, so that may not be so great. But I don't know, maybe that's what I should do. I don't know, that just helps them develop though. Alright, we're just going to go ahead and do that. Alright, now what do we do next? Do we attack their queen? Do we develop a knight? Maybe we develop the knight. Because they have two pieces developed. I only have one, so I need to get on that. So bringing my knight up is probably a good move here. Or do I attack their queen? That might be a possibility. Maybe I attack their queen. That might be the best move because now they're forced to do something about that. they could recapture and then I can capture. If they try to move over here and attack my pawn, I can castle. So we'll just go ahead and attack them, attack their queen. All right, now, do I capture towards the center or do I go the other way? I think usually you want to capture towards the center, but if I capture the other way, we have an half open E file, and then my bishop can escape if I need it to, if they attack with their knight. And I can develop my knight and try and land on this outpost here. All right, now that was probably not the best move because the queens are off the board and we want to keep our kings in the center now to try and get them in the action. As long as the rooks can't target our king. So I'm going to go ahead jump my knight up here, and then I can threaten to land on that outpost. Okay. All right, do I just bring another piece up to attack that bishop? Or excuse me, bring my bishop up to attack his knight. That's a possibility. So I think I will do that. We'll just go there. Developing. Okay, now I have a fine outpost here. So, I should keep my bishop pair. I have to watch out. He could try and push forward here and chase me. If I bring my knight up here to the outpost on e5, that could be an issue. All right. Well, should probably get that knight up to the outpost. But if I do that, he could push forward here, chasing my bishop. So maybe, do I give up my bishop for his knight? And then I'm just burning a lot of time here. So if I attack his rook, he could attack, move here and just attack me. Do I take his knight? That just gives up my bishop pair when I don't have to. All right. I think... Okay, this is the turning point in the game. Sorry I'm taking a while here. I need to find the right path forward. Do I target this pawn and his knight? Well, the pawn's protected by his bishop. Do I target his knight? No. If I move my knight up, then I can try and attack his with a pawn, driving it away. But like I said, if I go here, he can push a pawn forward, chasing my bishop away. So maybe I should bring my bishop outside this pawn chain, or just get rid of this bishop. Maybe I'll just do that. I'll just get rid of the bishop. I'm taking way too much time thinking about this. Now we can jump onto the outpost. We can chase his knight back with my pawn moving up here. And he's left with a bad bishop where I have a good bishop. All right, so there we go. We chase his knight out of there. All right. Now we could just move our pawn up here, but then... no, he can't move here, or we just grab his... we just attack him. All right. So I need to bring my king up. Bring my king up. Okay, we're doing all right, but need to find a way to do better. Need to activate my rooks. So, I imagine if I move my king up, that should be pretty good. Do I castle now? Even though my king is probably better off in the center, I need to figure out where I want this king. All right. Let us go here. That way, if he pushes his pawn here, we can capture, we can knock out his rook. We can bring our king up. And his bishop can't move up, or we just snatch it up with our knight. So our knight, we have a really strong knight here. Okay. Now he wants to bring that knight up there anyway. Okay, but this allows us to attack his rook. Then we could jump over here and attack his king, maybe. He could just move up here, preventing us. Okay. All right. Well, I think we should bring our king up. So we'll bring our king up. Get it closer to the action. All right. Now what? Now what? Do we push forward here and attack the pawn? His pawn would have to come forward. I don't know if I like that. All right. What now? What now? Need to activate our rook, so why not place our rook here on this open file? Oh, that just gives us a pawn now. Huh. All right, that worked out pretty good for us. Okay, so we're just ahead a pawn there. Now we could try and drop our rook back, target these pawns here and here. So we probably need to double our rooks up on the open E file. Yeah, I think that'll work pretty good. If we double our rooks up on the open E file, that should keep us pretty strong. All right, I guess that surprised my opponent. Now they're thinking, trying to figure out what to do since they're behind by a pawn. Okay. So if we double up on the E file, we could try and maybe move a rook up here, trade off, but he could just double his rooks on his second rank and stop things. So it's probably better to maybe drop the rook back to E5. So if we drop our rook back to e5, we're targeting this pawn along with our, well, really, we would be targeting this pawn. All right, my opponent is really, now they're taking some time on this. Okay. What would be a good move that my opponent could play here? You're behind in the material, behind a pawn, so you want to exchange off more pawns. So good moves for them might be to find a way to get rid of some pawns. You know, maybe push their pawns forward on the queen side here. That might be a possibility. Okay, so they decide to double up. So now I should double my rooks up, probably. Or do I just drop back here and target this pawn that's unprotected? Well, he could just move his knight. If he does that, he would just probably go forward here. If he goes forward, okay, now I have to think, because he'll probably just push forward here. So do I keep his knight out by pushing this pawn up? Maybe that's the way to go. But then he'll start targeting this backward pawn. I don't think I like that. All right, so maybe I should immediately go after this. If I bring the other rook and double my rooks up and he pushes forward here, I don't think I like that. So let's just go after this. Go after this unprotected pawn. So now he'll be forced to move his knight. He'll probably push his knight forward. We can just knock that knight out of there, I guess. All right, so he'll probably jump his knight to c4, forking our king and our rook, so we're going to be forced to capture with our bishop. Then he'll capture probably this way. He'll have an isolated A pawn. We'll have this backward B pawn here. All right, that seems to be the way to go. It looks like he's forced to bring his knight forward. Then that'll force me to exchange his knight for my bishop. Because I'm in check, it'll be a fork of my king and the rook. Now I could get out of it by checking his king up here and then moving my king here. But do I want to do that? Or do I just trade off because I'm ahead in material by a pawn? So maybe I should trade off. And he'll have that weak, isolated. He has more pawn islands. He'll have a weak pawn over here on the A file. And I'll be targeting these pawns. He'll be forced to guard them. All right. Yeah, I think that's the only way for my opponent to go is to push his knight. Yeah, right. Okay, so he does that move. So I think we're pretty much forced. Our only other option is to check with the rook. Oh, no, we can't even do that because we're in check. So we pretty much just have to capture there. Now, usually you want to capture towards the center. His options are if he captures away from the center, which he did, now I have this isolated pawn. So, oh, and I can just grab this other pawn. What was he thinking? That doesn't make sense. Now we just grab that. So now we're 2 pawns ahead. Okay, and I should trade off material here because that'll just help me. So we'll just trade off. Now I go ahead and do I protect with the rook? Maybe that would be best. Because then my king could guard this file. If I move my king over to protect the pawn, it kind of decentralizes my king. And then he can take control of this E file. So the better option here would be guard with the rook, then push the pawn forward. Something like that. Because if I move my king over to C2 to protect, he could grab the open E file. If he does that, grabbing the open E file, well then I would be forced to move up here with my rook. I'd play defense. So let's go with our rook there. And then now we can, do we want to push forward there? Because that helps get rid of one of his weaknesses. Oh, we might as well just go there then. Gain space. All right. Now, what do we do here? What do we do? Might as well push that pawn forward, try and gain even more space. Okay, so there we go. Now we can go up here. And try and get our king into the action. The only problem, one thing I don't like is his king could try and go here and then infiltrate down into the position. And go after this pawn. So I'm kind of stuck guarding that. So they resigned. All right. Well, I guess they got tired of trying to play on. They were behind 2 pawns, so let's do it. Oh, and it's showing I'm ahead by almost +5, so I'm pretty much winning. I don't know. When somebody gives up like that, I mean, they were 2 pawns down, but they could have played on. I mean, with just rooks in the ending and pawns, sometimes if you can exchange off enough pawns, you can try and go for a draw. So sometimes it makes me wonder if they're looking at the evaluation bar or, the evaluation when they make their decision. I don't know. I mean, some people are using computer help out there sometimes. All right. So game review, and then we'll do a little computer analysis. So we got the win there. Looks like I played at 86.4% accuracy, and they played at 78.2. The game, it was kind of even. Then I got a slight edge. Almost started losing my advantage before it shot back up again. And then I was just, ahead a long time in the end game. All right. Bad moves. It looks like I had 3 inaccuracies. My opponent had 7. We both had 2 mistakes, but they had 1 blunder. So we'll have to see what their blunder was. I played, it looks like the computer says I played at a 2200 level versus their 1750 level. All right, we'll do a quick review that blasts through the moves, and then we'll look deeper with some computer analysis. So, and I definitely recommend that to improve your game. Try and go over, whether you win, draw, or lose. Try and see what you could have done better, what you missed. If you really want to go over a game, you should look at it first without computer help and see what you can figure out, and then go back over it with the computer to see what you missed. All right, they do not like that move, huh? They do not like that move much at all. All right, so it says I made a mistake there. And this move, now I don't know if this was the right time, but I saw this move in a book, a Jabava London system book, where they said, if they check you, you can block, which is what happened in the game by pushing the C pawn, and the queen protects your knight. But anyway, we'll look at this in the computer analysis. Let me blast through these moves. And so that was a mistake. Apparently they should have pushed their pawn forward. Oh, and then they could have brought their bishop out this way and tried to trade bishops off. Okay. All right, next we had They liked me getting rid of my bishop by taking out their knight, because their knight could have dropped, jumped up here and attacked my knight. Now my knight is just stuck there unless his other knight tries to get rid of mine by re-maneuvering out of its outpost. All right, a mistake there. What should have been played? Their knight should have dropped back, and then from there the knight could have jumped here and targeted my knight, and they could have gotten rid of that great knight that I have there. All right, we chased the knight out that way, but apparently I should have just gone ahead and captured right there. Huh. I don't know. Briefly, I thought about capturing, giving up my bishop for his knight, and then trying to target these pawns, with my king and rooks and with this F pawn. So they don't like that. Apparently, I should have just immediately pushed forward here, but I don't know. If I do that, they could have pushed forward, but then I guess I could have just jumped up with my pawn. More things to take a look at in the computer analysis. All right, the blunder right here. Okay, that is a blunder, of course, because now I can just snatch up the bishop and then pick off a pawn, which is what I did. So capture, then we go ahead by a pawn. They like that move, which there was no choice. I had to do that, but they didn't like me dropping my rook back here. I probably should have just doubled the rooks up. All right, so there we just went ahead another pawn. So we're pretty much winning now. And they just helped by getting rid of one of their rooks. And I don't know if I played the best moves over here on the queen side. Maybe I should have just brought my rook up earlier. Okay, this is where my opponent resigned. So let's look at the computer analysis, and that game only lasted 29 moves. So the Jabava London is what I set up with d4, knight to f6, knight to c3, and then they play this move because if they don't play that, there's a possibility of immediately pushing the e pawn. But if you want the Jabava London, you're probably going to play bishop to f4. So now this is a common move where you push your c pawn using your flank pawn to attack the more valuable central pawn. And the computer says that e3 should be played here. Now the recommendation was bishop to g4. I don't know if I agree with that, because then you could just chase that bishop back by pushing the f pawn. So apparently this is an inaccuracy. And the best thing to do here, according to the computer, is push your knight up to b5 or capture the c pawn with d takes c5. All right. Well, let's look at, well, first of all, what do they recommend? They recommended bishop to g4 here. Now the computer's kind of changing its mind. It's saying queen to a5. So anyway, there's options for them. a6 or c takes d4. But with this move, the computer recommends that. So we would immediately be forcing them to cover here, because we're threatening to capture with check. And they don't want to guard with their king, or we could even just play bishop up there and fork the king and queen. So they would have to play this move. White would have an edge here. Now we should play, it looks like c3 or even a4, protecting that knight. Let's see what happens if I play c3. Yeah, it says that's best and that they should play e6 here. So if they play that, now we should play a4 or knight to f3. a4 protects our knight and relieves our bishop of guard duty there, and we gain some space. Then they just recommend developing their bishop here. All right, back to what happened in the game. I played this move, the mistake, instead of knight to b5. So they thought, oh, they're going to pick off this knight, but they overlooked. I think they moved so fast, I think they just overlooked the c3 move. Although the computer recommends I just drop back to c3. But we have that move. And now the knight is protected. And we're threatening to just pick off this pawn. So they played that. But apparently, and here the best move is to go ahead and capture that pawn and force them to trade off their bishop if they want to keep material even. So what should they have done? b6, and I think that's what I thought they were going to play. Oh man, if they played c4 or b6, it looks like black has an edge at this point. So now the best thing for me to do would be just to develop my bishop up to d3, keeping their knight out of the position. They could play e6, bishop to a6, attacking my bishop. Anyway, you get the idea. So in the game, they played e6. I capture, forcing them to capture, and they, after the recapture, material is even. So here, it looks like bishop to e2, knight to f3, or bishop to d3, just normal development. It says this move is good, but the game's just even after this. So, I don't know. I kind of like end games. So, if I get the queens off the board, it kind of brought us into the end game more quickly. But, this is not the best of the best move, obviously. It looks like I should have played bishop to d3. And here they should have avoided the trade, queen to a5, or even b6, targeting the pawn. But then I thought, well, I could just go ahead and castle and protect the pawn and bring my rook up to the center. So they capture an inaccuracy. The computer says they should have placed the queen on a5 where it would be lined up on my king. And that would prevent me from castling queenside as well, because it would target that pawn. All right, so after the capture, although computer thinks I should have captured towards the center, keeping a... One reason I didn't do that, if it would be a more symmetrical pawn formation if I captured towards the center here. And it would be even more likely that we'd have a draw. So I wanted to unbalance things a little bit by having a half-open E file. They have a half-open C file. So things aren't quite so symmetrical. So now, after castling, apparently b6 would have been better. If they push this pawn, maybe they could move their bishop here and fight my bishop, try and get rid of my bishop pair, leave me with a bad bishop. blocked in by these central pawns on the same color as my dark squared bishop. So I developed my knight, but f3. They like f3 better, which would have kept his knight out of that outpost, because now the knight just jumps right in there. All right, yeah, f3 would have been better to keep the knight out of there. So I attack, develop my bishop at the same time. And this move they do not like. Once again, b6, and then maybe going here and getting rid of the bishop. So that is an inaccuracy, giving up my bishop pair. So apparently it would have been better to play knight to e5, but then I was thinking they would just push and chase my bishop here. You know, or they could just jump their knight in here. Or here, they could develop their knight and attack mine. So, yeah, knight to d7 apparently is the best move. I thought, you know, what if they played that? If they did that, I could attack their knight. Then that pawn wouldn't be protected, so they'd probably capture my bishop, giving me time to retreat my bishop. So what does it say about that move? g5 says that's an inaccuracy, that instead it would be better to just drop the knight back. Just drop the knight back here. Oh yeah, because now the one knight could come forward and the other knight could be backing it up. And it prevents us from taking their knight. Okay, in the game, we were in this position. I get rid of their knight. That way I could bring my knight up to the outpost and it wouldn't be challenged immediately by his knight. So now space is gained. That's a mistake. Apparently, knight to g5 would have been better. So it'd be better to do that and then maybe drop back and attack my knight on the outpost. So here, gaining space with h4 or even f4. Let's see if they want f4 instead now. h4. They like that move, although bishop to c2. They like that as well. Oh, that would give my knight a little escape area to drop back if it's attacked. So, oh, and also if I played f4 and the knights are exchanged, well, I shouldn't capture with a pawn. It'd be better to get a rook up there to recapture and keep them with that backwards pawn and a half open file. Okay, back to the game. They played g5. I chased the knight away. He goes back that way, but knight to f6 would have been better. So now they don't like that. Apparently, that's a mistake, and that h4 would have been better. Okay, so if I played h4, they should go ahead and capture, it looks like. So capture, rook captures, and now b5. Backed up by the rook. So then here I should play g4. Rook to b7. King, wow, king up to f2. Huh. Or king to e2. Now they're saying king up to e2, getting my other rook room to get into the game. Rook to g7. You know, we go there. Rook at a to h1. Piling up on that. A5. Yeah, so the game could have gone on like that. Back to what happened. I went here in case he decides to push and we open up the F file. So he does push forward there. Once again, they want H4. But I tried to bring my king up into the game, connect my rooks. So the game continues with centralizing my other rook, and the computer doesn't like that. Apparently, once again, H4 is what they want. You know, if they capture, they have doubled pawns up here, and I could regain the pawn by attacking it with a rook. So the blunder move, what should have been played here instead? Apparently, rook to F6 to protect that pawn from the side. You know, and there's a possibility of swinging over here to H6 and maybe targeting my H pawn. And because of that, the computer's #1 recommendation is that, unless it changes its mind. Now it's saying I should have put the rook in behind the pawn. You know, maybe try to push up to H4. And here the king should just come forward. King to G7. All right, back to the blunder move. They bring their bishop out. And then I was able to capture, which is best. You know, rook recaptures, and then I go ahead a pawn here. So immediate knight to C4 is the best move. Instead, they put their rooks on the second rank, protecting one another. But apparently an immediate knight to C4 would have been better. So if we look at that, does that make any difference from what happened in the game? Here I would be forced to capture or move my king to C2. But they recommend capture and then capturing towards the center. And here I should play B4, forcing them to decide whether to capture en passant, and then I could recapture, or just ignoring that. So here, king to F7 is recommended. And then I should just double my rooks up at this point. You know, with something like that. And then, white is ahead here pretty good. They recommend either G4, trying to trade off some pawns, or rook to B8. Maybe threatening to push here, trying to open things up on the queen side. But in the game, we got into this position. I dropped back. That's an inaccuracy. Looks like I should have played B3 to keep that knight out of the position. I thought about pushing that, but I was worried that I would have this backwards pawn that I would have to defend here. But that would have kept that knight out, and I would have had my bishop. All right, so they go there. I capture, which is best. They captured the wrong way. I thought they would capture this way because now this pawn is protected. I can play B3 and start attacking. I'm keeping pressure on these pawns. They're protected at the moment. Here it looks like I should do that. Then what? Rook to D6. Apparently you don't want to capture. That would just pull my pawn towards the center, and then I could target this pawn on a half-open file. They recommend rook to D6, making it easier to double rooks up in the future. And then I should go rook to B1, G4, capture, and king up to E3, trying to get into the action with the king. So, if you're behind in material, Well, here we would be, well, after this recapture, it looks like, yeah, I'm ahead by a pawn. So you would want to trade off pawns if you're behind in material. And they recommend rook to h6, targeting this pawn, and then I would bring my rook up to defend, you know, something like that. In the game, if we go back a little bit, you know, back to the blunder move. So that was the blunder, allowing me to capture and go ahead a pawn. So here, they jump forward, we trade off, they captured the wrong direction, allowing me to go ahead another pawn. And now rook to b7 just helps me trade off more material, more pieces when I'm ahead, you know, and that's the best move. So now they're attacking here, and I instead, apparently king to c2 is a little better, but I thought if I move my king to c2, the rook could grab this open file here, and I would have to guard my second rank by putting my rook up here to prevent checks and picking off these pawns. So my rook would be playing too much defense. So that is the reason I went here instead. And now my opponent starts bringing the king up. I push forward. Apparently b3 would have been even better. All right. But I didn't want to play b3. You know, if I attacked, I wouldn't be able to capture this way because of the pin on my rook there, or on that pawn against my rook. So they start bringing their king up. Here, I probably should have immediately, yeah, rook to e1 was the best move here. Instead, I pushed that pawn. Once again, rook to e1 would have been better. Yeah, I shouldn't have done that because that gives my king, or excuse me, my opponent's king a way to get into my pawns. So I should have immediately, you know, I should have left that pawn there. If I left this pawn here and they tried to push forward, I could just push my pawn forward, and then they would not be able to get in here because this pawn would cover the dark squares. So yeah, that wasn't as good doing that. So the game went on with rook to e1, and here my opponent just resigned. Now my opponent resigned there. What if, apparently f4 is best. Yeah, they can't, you know, if they tried to bring their rook over to fight my rook and I just traded it off, their king would end up here. And then what? I could attack, try and go after this pawn here. And yeah, I would just have too many passed pawns. So, you know, they need to keep that rook. All right, anyway, this is how it ended. And my opponent resigned here. So, you know, feel free to leave comments. As always, I love hearing from viewers and subscribers. If you're not a subscriber, please like and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you for watching, and have a super chess day.